Well, let's cross over now to Penina Karibe. She's following the COP22 summit in Marrakech. Penina, take us through the one-day highlights of the COP22 summit in Morocco.
Well, Bridges, there's been excitement here in Marrakech, of course, following the Paris Agreement coming into force that just happened a few days ago. But also there's an understanding of the huge task that lies ahead, and that is, of course, of implementing that Paris Agreement. Now, this morning, during the opening of the summit, we did hear from the newly elected COP22 president, and he did say that the real task here of implementation is quite huge. He said the fact that this force has come into, the agreement has come into force, does not yet put the world on track to achieving the goal of reducing global temperatures to 2 degrees or even 1.5 degrees as agreed in Paris last year. And so he called on nations to have what he called an ambitious commitment to achieving this. Now, of course, with this agreement coming into force, countries were made aware of the high expectations that have been placed on their hands. And delegates here also outlined 5 key areas that will be crucial in order for countries to achieve these goals. Now, one of them, of course, is that of financing, which is very, very important to allow developing countries to green their economies and build resilience. There's also the issue of nationally determined contributions. This basically, of course, is just countries, outlining their agenda or how they are going to achieve these goals from the year 2020. There's the issue, of course, of support for adaptation. Again, this is very crucial for African economies, and also capacity building. Now, they said, of course, this needs to be built to meet the specific needs of African or developing countries. And finally, Beatrice, they need to fully engage non-party stakeholders. So these were what delegates here outlined, and this, of course, is what we expect to top the agenda in the next 10 coming days, Beatrice.
Well, Penina, Africa is most affected, though, by climate change. What's at stake for African countries as world leaders and environment experts seek those ways of implementing the Paris Climate Change Agreement?
Well, of course, there's enthusiasm among African countries here about this Paris deal. But we spoke to several delegates here, African delegates, and they said it's not just about putting it into force. It's also committing to make sure this agreement is a success, it's successfully implemented. As you know, Beatrice, Africa bears the brunt of global warming, and it doesn't emit as much as some other countries they were telling us today. So they said for them, they're very, very keen to see how this deal will be implemented. And top for them, of course, is the issue of financing. They need funds. Those we spoke to here said they need funds to make sure that they build green economies, that they build a resilient economies, of course. And they said also that there's been loss and damage as a result of these effects of climate change. So they need some kind of compensation for what they've lost. They also said, Beatrice, that they need to know where these funds are coming from. Are we just talking about funds, but where are they coming from? Who is going to do what, Beatrice? So a very, I would say, very high expectations, of course, from the African delegates to see how this is going to be implemented. Are these timelines, are people going to stick to these timelines, or is this just empty talk? That's what they said, Beatrice.
Well, indeed, Penina, it is day 1, of course, of COP22. But what is likely to dominate the agenda at the Marrakech climate talks in coming days?
Well, like I mentioned, Beatrice, of course, 2 main issues here. We're talking about finances, funds. We've, of course, engaged some delegates here, and they were saying that, of course, is what everybody here is curious to find out. What exactly is needed? How much money are we talking about? Where are these funds going to come from? Who is going to get what? And, of course, that's in regards to every country's specific or unique needs when we talk about implementing this deal. And then, of course, Beatrice, there's a very crucial session here that they are calling the nationally determined contributions. Like I mentioned earlier, this is, of course, individual countries going out of their way to explain what plans they have from the year 2020 to make sure they fully implement this deal. So we are going to hear in the next 10 days what every country is committing to in order to make this deal successful, Beatrice.
Right, Penina Karibe, for us there following the COP22 summit in Marrakech.